What's going on, everyone? It's Adrian from Draft Time, and it's been a while since I've done one of these videos, but I wanted to go ahead and do one for the playoff slate for tonight for the NBA for FanDuel and DraftKings, and I'm going to do a lot more of these for the playoffs because there's a lot of strategies that you can implement when building your lineups that could really help you win big. Now, tonight, there's not a whole lot of value out there, but there are some things that you might want to implement. Now, first of all, as far as injuries are concerned, you want to pay attention to that Chris Paul injury. He didn't look good in Game 1 or Game 2 with that shoulder injury, and even though he's officially listed as probable, I wouldn't be surprised if he's a late scratch because he's kind of been somewhat of a liability out there for Phoenix. He's only had 1 day's rest with travel in between. And if he does end up missing the game, you definitely want to take a look at Cameron Payne. He's 5,300 on FanDuel and 4,800 on DraftKings. He had a big game last game. If Chris Paul does start, it's kind of hard to justify him as a bench role player. I'd lock him into a couple of lineups, but I wouldn't have a whole lot of exposure of Cam Payne. Now, another thing you want to pay attention to is whether or not Spoelstra starts Dwayne Dedmon to match the size and physicality of Milwaukee. So if Spoelstra does end up starting Dwayne Dedmon, then you got to start him on DraftKings and FanDuel. I mean, he's 3,100 on DraftKings, so that's a definite start, and he's 4,500 on FanDuel. So pay attention to that. See if Spoelstra ends up putting him into the starting lineup for Trevor Ariza. Now, my top value pick for tonight is going to be Robert Covington. He's 4,500 on FanDuel, and he's 4,400 on DraftKings. And he's averaging right around 26 fantasy points per game on the season. And we have him projected right around that, 26 fantasy points. He's only scored 17.5 and 13.7 in his last two playoff games. But one thing you got to know is he played 34 and 37 minutes in those games. So the fact that he only scored 17 and 13 fantasy points is kind of somewhat of an anomaly. I mean, I can't see him getting those kinds of minutes and only putting up that much fantasy points again. And he's really the best defender on Portland. So I don't see any reason why Terry Stotts decides to lower his minutes. And he's really their only power forward on the roster, even though he's not even really a power forward. I expect him to be around 35 to 45% owned, just because everyone else knows about his value. But he's still worth it. Now, my top stud for tonight, that's going to be Jimmy Butler. He's 9,100 on FanDuel and he's 8,400 on DraftKings. He had a decent Game 1 despite shooting horribly. He still scored 44 fantasy points in Game 1. He had a really bad Game 2, but that game was over in the first quarter. I think tonight he's going to be back in full force. He's going to give you points, rebounds, assists, and steals. The game should be competitive. It's Milwaukee's first road playoff game in a while. The Bucks are only a 1.5 point favorite, which I agree with that line. We have him projected to score 50.74 FanDuel points and 52.14 DraftKings points. He's got triple-double potential, so be on the triple-double lookout. The crowd's going to be into it at American Airlines Arena, so I expect playoff Jimmy to be back in full force. As far as sleeper picks tonight, my top FanDuel sleeper, that's going to be Tyler Hero. He's $4,900 on FanDuel. He only played 19 and 17 minutes in the first two playoff games, so he should be very low owned. All he has to do is get up to 25 fantasy points to hit value, which he could easily do, and he's a crowd favorite in Miami, so if he ends up hitting a couple of buckets early on and the crowd gets into it, you could see him get a major confidence boost. And for a player like Tyler Hero, that's something that they really need. They need confidence. And young guys like Tyler Hero, their game doesn't travel very well on the road, which is one of the reasons why he played poorly in the first two games. Now, my top DraftKings sleeper, that's going to be JaMychal Green. He's just $3,300 on DraftKings. He's been getting around 20 minutes a game all season long. He's almost a 1 fantasy point per minute scorer. He doesn't need to score much to end up breaking the slate. I mean, 25 fantasy points could end up breaking the slate on DraftKings. And, he could hit a couple of threes, give you the 3-point bonus, and then he could end up getting crunch time minutes from Mike Malone. So he's a boomer bust kind of guy, but I think he does have the potential to break the slate on DraftKings. Now, one thing you got to look out for is the blowout between Phoenix and the Lakers. It's the Lakers' first home playoff game since Kobe. So it's going to be crazy in Staples Center. You also got to be concerned about Chris Paul's injury. And it's Devin Booker's first road playoff game ever. So the Lakers are a 7-point favorite, but I wouldn't be surprised if, it's a 20-point blowout and, Monty Williams pulls Chris Paul and Devin Booker early, which is why I said you still might want to consider Cameron Payne in a couple of your lineups. So be on the lookout for that blowout. Game definitely has blowout potential. You might be able to scrape some value from some of those bench players who might get those fourth quarter minutes if you're really trying to, hit it big. So anyways, that's all I have for today. Let me know what you think in the comments. Make sure you smash that like button and make sure if you're not already subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you want to sign up for Draft Time so you have access to our player projections and our lineup optimizers, make sure you do that as soon as possible. There's a free 7-day trial. But anyways, that's all I have. Peace.